The Walking Dead is an extremely popular series in America right now. Peaking at over 14 million viewers in the US, the grim reality of a zombie apocalypse seems to be on everyone's minds. Often, I wonder how long I would survive in such a world. If I'm honest with myself, I know I'd probably not last for more than 24 hours. But then I got to thinking, what if someone with a better skill set for survival found themselves in such a world? What if our cast of survivors was comprised of some of our favorite characters from another series? It couldn't just be any series. For example, it'd be difficult to see the cast of Dragon Ball Z having a difficult time against walkers. But what if we took characters from a more realistic setting? Today, I want to talk about a reality in which the world of the Batman universe was plagued with a zombie apocalypse. How would our cast fare then? More interestingly, how would the story go if we put a cast of villains together? In 2002, a new villain, the Mortician, was introduced in an issue of Gotham Knights. In the story, he injects corpses with an infested embalming fluid full of bioluminescent parasites in an attempt to cheat death and bring back his mother and father. He's successful in reanimating the dead, but in the end, he is stopped by Batman, who finds an antivirus. What would happen if Batman didn't stop him? When I think of the Batman universe, the first 5 villains that come to mind are the Joker, Mr. Freeze, the Riddler, Poison Ivy, and the Penguin. For this video, I want to explore the possibilities of a world in which these 5 villains were grouped together, trying to survive. Who would be the first to die? Who would survive the longest? How long could they last? Starting with the most likely to die to who would survive the longest, we'll analyze each character's survivability based on their skill set, personality, and how they'd interact with the group. Given the supervillain nature of our band of subjects, it'd be difficult seeing any of these characters having a hard time against walkers alone. So I'll be focusing more on how they'd fare in the harsher survivalist environment set on by a zombie outbreak, rather than the zombies themselves. So who would die first? I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised to see their favorite villain up first on the chopping block, and I'll be honest, when thinking about who would be at the top, I was personally vying for it to be the Joker. He's my personal favorite and would be the obvious leader amongst the group. One of his greatest assets in his campaign for chaos is his extreme unpredictability. If he were roaming on his own, his innate fearlessness would make it easy to subdue walkers that got in his way. Were he to encounter a group of survivors, I imagine his ability to talk a crowd would either charm them enough to let him join, or have him be executed on the spot. He does possess a tenacity to get what he needs when things get serious, and his eccentric charade could come in handy as a distraction from ulterior motives. He isn't one to let a good opportunity pass him by. While there does seem to be an overall sense of planning and mastermind execution in his comical operations against Batman, he does also show signs of a character who acts impulsively and shows little to no sign of remorse or second thought. This would make him an incredibly dangerous force to his allies in a zombie apocalypse. If the group were somehow cornered by walkers or another band of survivors, I could easily see him finding humor in the situation and either betraying one of his allies to escape, or throwing himself into the horde while laughing maniacally in the irony. There's always a method to his madness, or so it would seem, but his wildcard factor coupled with the fact that his party gags would be exhaustible and impractical against a horde would likely serve to just annoy his allies. Also, if he was in a standoff situation, a flag gun wouldn't be very useful.
That's not funny. That actually is pretty funny.
So what about if you were somehow the leader of a group? A huge part of the reason why the Joker has so much influence in Gotham in the first place is his status as a strong figure for anarchy. What's more chaotic than a world overturned by a zombie apocalypse? In a dystopian society, I do not think his band of henchmen would stay loyal, and the Joker might only come across as an authoritative figure, exactly the opposite of what the textbook anarchist stands for. Stripped of his merry band of thugs, the Joker alone holds little chance of surviving. And given the psychopathic, sadistic, and chaotic nature of his character, I think the Joker would find the severely underpopulated world of a zombie outbreak miserable and even boring. Were he bitten, I can see him offing himself rather than turning. Mr. Freeze is arguably the most effective offensive weapon amongst his allies. A gifted cryo-engineer, he brings a strong value to the group since he'd be able to craft freeze weapons in ice-cold protection. Walkers don't do well in Arctic temperatures. There aren't a ton of zombie films that showcase the undead in these kinds of environments, and that's for good reason. They'd be immobilized by the deep freeze and rendered too weak to move. His full-body armor encases him and protects his skin from potential bites all over. And even if he was bitten, his unique physiology makes him immune to most viruses and bacteria. So why is it that he would be the next to die? While I do think Mr. Freeze is a powerhouse of offensive force for our team of survivors, strip away his suit, and he's just a frail man obsessed with restoring his wife from a degenerative disease. Well, actually, strip away his suit, and he can't survive in the first place because of his cryogenic physiology. Because his body runs on sub-zero temperatures, he can only survive in the cold. While being immune to the virus is a good perk, for Mr. Freeze, it comes at the cost of being heavily reliant on his cryosuit. He's as vulnerable as an astronaut in space. Eventually, he would exhaust his suit's energy stores, and it might not be as convenient to simply go back to a lab to recharge in this dystopian world. The second the suit shuts down, or is damaged, he's finished. Also in his backstory, he's almost entirely driven by his drive to either restore his wife or get revenge on those that seem to get in his way of doing so. I don't think he'd be interested in sharing the post-apocalyptic world with this band of villains, and would probably attempt to travel away from the world up north where there aren't any undead or living. Unfortunately for him, a clunky cryosuit doesn't exactly go unnoticed, and he'd likely be killed by another survivor for his powerful technology en route. While the Penguin isn't a very physically strong or intimidating presence, he can be an incredibly charming character who excels in business management, able to organize a following both above and below the law. His true nature, however, is that of a brutal and sadistic crime lord. His intellect and ability to play both sides would make him a great ambassador to organize deals with other groups of survivors. While he'd likely orchestrate others to do his dirty work for him, if he did ever need to defend himself from walkers or survivors, his trick umbrellas are equipped with motorized flight capabilities, flamethrowers, machine guns, and narcotic gas. He is also a master of judo, and despite his physical stature, possesses some levels of heightened agility. His unassumingly timid and non-threatening physical presence would especially give him a stark advantage against enemy survivor groups. Over the course of the zombie outbreak, I can see Penguin charming his way into a position of power and eventually finding himself as the public leader of a group of survivors. His campaign would be one run out of a fear based on his violent notoriety. To a new group of survivors, he'd be the type of leader that, while initially charming, would still be unquestionably seen as a bad guy, similar to the governor. His downfall would come from his vicious tendencies. In Tim Burton's Batman, the Penguin bit off the tip of a man's nose and wanted to kill children. In the Arkhamverse, Penguin gouged out a client's eyes and pushed them into the freeway. And in Gotham, Penguin fed his stepmother her own children. He's a lighter version of the Joker in terms of violence, and in the end, his true sadistic nature likely wouldn't remain concealed for long, being considered too dangerous and unpredictable for a team of survivors to follow blindly, with respect. It's likely that if the undead don't get to this loose cannon first, he'll eventually be done in by his own team instead. The Riddler would fill in the role of an advisor and tactician in the group. His deductive and analytical skills are on par with Batman's, and like he did in pre-apocalypse Gotham, he would use this to his advantage and be able to amass a system for great wealth in the New World Order. Controlling a large mass of resources in the zombie apocalypse would grant him a certain power. With his mass wealth and manipulative charismatic skill, he isn't too different from the Penguin, and it's likely he wouldn't often need to get his hands dirty. What gives him a greater rate of survivability than Penguin is his superior mastermind intellect, extreme wit, and relatively calmer composure. He would likely set actions in motion from the shadows, like a puppeteer. In one Batman crossover where the inmates of Arkham Asylum roam free, the Riddler chooses to flee Gotham rather than stay in the lawless chaos that ensues. This shows a sense of rationality and caution that would be useful in a zombie apocalypse. On top of that, his skill in escapology and mind games would make it difficult to keep him a living prisoner in any situation. Also, throughout the canon, Riddler is shown to switch sides frequently, sometimes opting to aid Batman in solving a crime, and at other times, growing bored of the simplicity in crime fighting. He seems to be driven mostly by powerful intellect and above all else, serves himself. He seems to be very similar to Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs, a powerful and intelligent ally so long as the alliance benefits him in some way. His downfall would likely be his modus operandi. An egomaniac, Riddler can't resist the urge to show off how smart he can be, purposely leaving clues that invite others to try and catch him. He doesn't simply kill off an enemy, not without first presenting some sort of riddle or a trap. Like a corrupted jigsaw, he would probably set up his enemies in an elaborate trap and present them with an opportunity to survive. Treating other enemy survivors in this manner could very well end up backfiring. It would certainly be interesting to see how he'd fare against a radical group like the Saviors. In addition to being an accomplished gymnast and skilled in hand-to-hand combat, Poison Ivy greatly overpowers the competition with her unnatural abilities. Given her greatly altered hybrid physiology, it's likely that she wouldn't even be detected by walkers since she wouldn't register as a flesh and blood organic being. Even if she were somehow detected and bitten by a walker, her toxic immunity would render any viruses or bacteria ineffective, and her status as a hybrid plant being would mean that any serious physical damage sustained could regrow over time. Her touch is deadly, and she also has an ability to infect other humans with a mind-controlling fungus that has been described to mutate in response to the host's biology. This means that not only would other humans not pose much of a threat to her, but that she may very well even have control over the undead. She can even hear and speak through plants, granting her a quasi-omnipresence in a zombie-ravaged world. Ivy wouldn't have much to worry about in terms of enemy survivors or the undead. Out of our cast of villains, Poison Ivy is the only one with what could truly be considered superpowers. Her abilities to manipulate, communicate with, and rapidly create plant life would be highly valued by any group of starving survivors, and I think it's safe to say that a being of her status would have major influence in the zombie apocalypse. Even if she were captured and held prisoner, she'd be too valuable for any smart group of survivors to kill off. In addition, her body emits pheromones that are capable of seducing both men and women, and she can even create truth serums which would be invaluable in a world where the living lie and steal to survive. It would be in her best interest to use this to her advantage. Of course, she's not all-powerful. Like a plant, she does require healthy amounts of sunlight, CO2, and water to survive. Significant exposure would weaken her abilities over time and could leave her vulnerable to attack. But, in a world so devoid of humans, it falls to presume that the elements necessary for growth would be in abundance and plant life would flourish. Another thing to consider is that her connection with the plants she controls is similar to that of limbs, and their destruction would likely cause her great pain. Her biggest weakness and most probable downfall stems from her delicate grasp on sanity. Just like her girlfriend Harley Quinn, Ivy was driven insane when she became a supervillain, and although she is a biochemical genius, she is a mad one, obsessed with creating and sustaining her own family of sentient plant beings. In the game Arkham Knight, Ivy showed a motherly affection toward her plants and is distressed whenever they were harmed or if she sensed that they were harmed. All it would take to control her is someone clever enough to orchestrate a way of endangering her plant life. She would likely die before letting any harm come to the nature she created. So that wraps up my list of who I think would survive the longest in a zombie-ridden Gotham. What about you? Who do you think would survive the longest? And if it were the zombie apocalypse and you had to choose, would you align yourself with the Joker, Mr. Freeze, Penguin, the Riddler, or Poison Ivy? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up. If you want to be notified of whenever I upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click on that little bell icon next to the button. And as always, thanks for watching.